Right, in this video, we're going to go through the design process of a um, laser etched nameplate. This is a black anodized nameplate that is on the left here in this drawing, 8 inches wide by 3¼ tall, and it's just text, maybe with some fields. And we'll pause throughout this video to kind of like change topics slightly, but try to keep it all within one close, tight video. We're going to be using Bartender because we're sending it down to a laser, and you could use Word, you could use any other product that has access to the Epilogue print driver, but in this case, we're going to use Bartender, and there are some layout considerations here I wanted to show. And in fact, I'm going to go ahead and start by just saving this somewhere on my desktop just to make sure I have a starting point here. And we'll start from scratch. So we go into Bartender, and we say New, say Blank, Next. We'll pick our printer, which in this case is an Epilogue engraver, hit Next. And if I had a predefined size, I might, like that. There we go. Got a predefined size, and I'll show in a separate video how to do that. Otherwise, you can create these things and then save them for future reference. This is 24 inches wide by 12 inches deep, or however you want to look at it. And this is the flatbed size of the Epilogue laser. And in this, we are not going to be creating one 24 by 12-inch plate, but rather we could have multiple. So if we go into up here where we have page setup, we have, remember, for portrait, use portrait all the time for the Epilogue Mini. The driver prefers that. And if I wanted to go in here and do multiple plates, I can fit as many as 3 across and 3 up and down within that 12 by 24 flatbed size. Not going to use any margins. I am going to manually set this, however, to whatever that size was. It's 3¼ over here on the left-hand side, so 3¼ there. And I'm not going to use a gap. I'm going to just make the assumption that I'm going to slam these blanks right next to each other, and that the tolerances are good enough that things will still be centered, right? And if this was a decal rather than a black anodized plate, you'd hit print borders. I sometimes change this to red. And this will allow the laser's driver to shift into vector cutting mode after it's etched the text. This is again for decals only, where you want to go in and do a vector cut on the outside to cut out the decal. This is a black anodized nameplate, so we're just going to leave that off. Okay, this is pretty much done at this point. Now you can see it's 8 inches across, 3¼ inches tall, and gosh, this has got rounded corners here. Well, let's see. Could I have changed that? Yep, you can. You can say rounded rectangle. You can even give it a corner radius. And if I look at this guy, it's 1/3, right? So you can do something like that, and now your Bartender screen will look like your blank. Now, some of the next things to do here, or maybe do some quick layouts of things that are not going to be printed, but are going to be used as visual guides. So if I go back here, you can see that I put in a number of blue lines. I'm going to just start with the blue circles, and I'm just going to copy those straight over, hit Control C, come over here, Control F, and now I'll show you how I did that. Double click on anything in Bartender and it'll pull up that entity's size and positioning rules. This is it's just a circle, and you can go up here to this basic shape, hit circle, and draw a circle. That's what you can do. But inside, you're going to see things like what's the color of the line, what's the color of the fill, and also what's the size. So in this drawing, it is an 1/8 inch diameter hole, so that's what I have, 1/8 inch by 1/8 inch. I can set the position here to whatever anchor point I want. In this case, I just want it to be the center of the circle. And a quarter, that's kind of what we have here. 1/4 inches over, 1/4 inch down, and symmetric throughout the entire thing. You can also lock it so that it can't be moved. And I think that's a good idea for things that are not printed, right? So I'm going to go ahead and I'll select the other three here and I'll lock those as well. When you have multiple lines here, group positions say lock. Now I've locked them all. If you go into one of them, you'll see it's locked. Okay. All right, so those are holes. They're not printed. How do I know? Well, if you go in here and you click on one of those objects, it'll say pre-printed. If that wasn't checked, you could pick when you're going to actually print it. But by putting pre-printed, it'll never go down to the laser. It'll show on your bartender screen, and that's about it. Okay, so that's our outline now for our holes. And in terms of other things that I commonly use for design guides, I throw a bunch of lines in here and I color them purple or blue or something to indicate that, hey, they're not really printing, they're just lines. And why do I do that? Well, here, let me get rid of that. You could, when you're looking at these drawings, when they're created in CAD, you know, these guys that are doing CAD drawings, they don't really have access to the full real Windows font set. And instead of calling things out as a font size, they many times will do something like this. They'll say it's 20, you know, a quarter inch high, and it's a Arial font. Well, quarter inch high, that's a really bad definition because when you get into sizing fonts, there's a white space above and below, and does that include that in the quarter inch? Who knows, right? So it's really common. You'll see these drawings that give a really poor description of what it is that they want for a font. In fact, when I laid this out the first time, you know, here, let's just take all of this. You can just draw a big square around everything. I'm going to get rid of some of this. Get rid of that. Okay, there as well. You can hold Control and click on more than one thing. Say copy over here, hit paste. And if you want to make sure that you're centering it within your white space, click over here, click here, right? But is that really what we wanted to do? Well, over here, it shows on the drawing that we want this bottom side of this text to be at about 0.48 inches down. So I created a line here, and in terms of its position, I put it 0.48 inches down from the top. Now that should be lined up right on it, and guess what? It's not when we centered it. So, you know, that's something you can just lay this in. There's also a grid snap up here. Get rid of that. You lay that on top, like right there. You can move your arrows around. Now we're going to be per the drawing. So the drawing also wants this to be 0.51 over. So I drew in another line here, 0.51 over, right? And I can just lay my text on top. Now it also said quarter inch high, right? So if I put this line in here, you'll see that's about right, right? So what size was that? Well, that's a 24-point font, but it's including all of the white space above and below. Now, granted, this is all uppercase, but if it wasn't, you'd have things like the comma or a lowercase p or q, things that fall below the bottom line here. And so, again, this is a really bad way of defining fonts in a CAD drawing, but those guys many times just don't have another choice with the CAD systems. Okay, so come in here. That's where I want this to be. And if I double click on it, you'll see that I had to also do some other crazy things here. I changed the scale down to 66% width. If I actually left it full width like that, it would fall completely off this page, even though I'm conforming to quarter inch high and Arial font, right? You can even see that if you look at the drawing, it's a little bit squished together, right? So I can go in here in a Bartender, double click, hit font. And on the width, if you don't like what you've got here, you can always type in something that you like, but I'm just going to hit 66. And you'll see that comes over pretty close to where we're we're coming here. I guess I could maybe do 70. Let's try that. If I just typed in 70. Yeah, that goes a little too far, doesn't it? So let's keep it back to where it was, 66. Okay. Now, the next thing, if I look at the drawing, is I want to have these things lined up. So you can click on one item that is properly positioned and then hold the control key, click on the second one. Notice that the primary object is in green. And now you can go over here and you can say, look, I want to align the left sides. Oh, isn't that nice? Okay. And so everything is now consistent in that direction. Now this is a paragraph, and this is a line. How do I know? Up here, that icon shows it's a line. This icon shows it's a paragraph. And so you can change it one way or the other. If I wanted to change this into a line, everything gets scrunched together. So we want it this way. And for laser etching, I always put bold on everything. So even in this drawing, they're showing a different weight to the bolding. I think you really want to have bold on both. So I've taken a little bit of a liberty here. This is an Arial font, whereas this one is an Arial black font. And in that case, in that way, I'm able to get a little bit heavier mark on the description here. Okay, so this, double click on this, and it's just a single line that says that. And in any piece of information that you're putting on your bartender screen, you can give it a variable and then reference that throughout the drawing. So I'll put description, or maybe I'll just put name. Okay. So now this has a variable of name behind it. Now, previously I've created these. Notice this whole paragraph is nothing more than a combination of multiple substrings. Like this is the prefix, this is the value, and then there's a formatting thing with the next prefix, then the value, prefix, value, all the way through. And this one is just a space character because I wanted that there. And then with certain things like the prefixes, I don't have any name associated with it, it's just text. But here below, I've assigned a variable to it. So in this way, I can actually, maybe I can attach this design to an external Excel file, text file, Oracle, SAP, whatever. And now I can reference the model name. If I wanted to put a barcode on this thing as well, I could reference serial number, name, description, whatever it is I might want to populate in the barcode. Okay, so this is kind of how I've done this. This is national stock number. This is SN for serial number, DRO for date of repair overhaul, a size string, a weight, and units for the weight. And that's how I've laid this out. Okay. So there we are. At this point, we could actually just go ahead and print this as is. If you don't like the blue items there, you can select everything, get rid of that by hitting Control and clicking, and then drag these off into the blue space. Anything that's in the blue space will be ignored by the printer driver, and leaving you only with this. You certainly can delete them, but if you're still playing around and moving stuff, it's good to kind of have some aids on the left-hand side to pull back in. All right, so we're going to pause on this before we go to the next topic. All right, we're going to continue now with the next section, which is, I'll try to get that out of the way, sorry. The next section here I wanted to go through was user entry forms. So here is down here in the Bartender bottom screen, you have two tabs. You have a template and a form. You can actually have multiple templates and multiple forms within any one Bartender file, but we'll keep it simple here and just have one of each. This is what you're printing, right? This is your template. Now, how do you get information into it? You don't really want end users going ahead and double clicking and editing things here. That's a bit messy, and they might move things, they might change things. So instead, keeping them out of the design, in order to keep them out of the design, we can create a form that they're prompted with every time that they go to print or send this down to the laser. And this form then can connect to these individual um, variables that we've created. So that's another reason why we did that before, right? So here I'll get rid of this. I'll get rid of a couple here. I think it's this. Yeah. So the way I've done this, you can certainly go up to create and data entry, but there's a faster way, and that's to go up to view, toolbox, data sources. And when you show that, if you want to just create a form for something here, you can drag it over. It'll ask you what kind of form element. And in most cases, it's going to be just a text entry thing. I think model was the other one I got rid of. Is that correct? Yeah, there we go. Right. So now we have something here, and I've done this previously for all these other things, and it's already linked to those named data sources. There's a couple things we need to change, but the first thing I think we want to do is we probably want to just select everything. I'm going to get rid of those for a second, and we'll just left align all of these. Looks like we got a date field here maybe that we want to pull out. Let's see if I did that right. Here, what if I move these things, like that's a name, that's going to be longer. That's a model number. What are the things that we know? Well, it's going to be probably the same description, same model. The national stock number is going to be the same. The serial number will probably be different. And I think the size will probably be the same. The weight and the size. I think the weight and the size, that might be a little bit different from one to the next. And then, of course, here, I'm going to put this up here. Maybe the weight, I'm going to change this a little bit. I'm going to make an assumption that the size and the weight are always the same. And that the only things that we're going to change then are going to be the serial number and the date. All right. So a couple things here, quick. Let's just make everything bold. So select it, hit bold, and let's move everything to a bigger font size as well. Right? Now let's say that we want to not allow people to change these things. So we can double click on any element again, whether it's the design window or the form window. And within that, you're going to see that it's linked already to a certain variable because of how we did it. And I'm going to make sure that each one is read only, so it can't be changed in this form. You can see the background goes to gray. I'm going to do that for each one of these things on the top. Read only. There you go. All right. And then this one, this will probably be read-only as well, but I still need to do something else here. This is a radio button that's either going to be LBS, right? Or it's going to be kilograms. And our default's going to be this. And so I can make that be the default. Say, use sample data. I could update it if somebody ever changed it, right? But we're also going to make it read-only. So that's not allowed either. I'm not sure I can do that, to be honest. Yeah, I cannot make that read-only. So if you don't want people playing around with that one, just get rid of it. Just delete it and don't allow people to change it. So now we have things in gray and we have things that are not in gray. You can even click on things here and change the background color so that, let's see, where do we do that font? Here we go, background color. Change it to something that kind of makes it obvious that they need to do something with this, right? They need to do something with this. So let's take this one. The other thing we're going to change here is the text label. This one's going to be serial number, right? Serial number. And next one is this. This is repair or reset / overhaul date. Okay. And I'm going to pause and probably fix these as well, but that's kind of how you go about changing the descriptions and how you enter this information in. Then let's just do a quick preview on this. So I'll go back to template. We're going to, first of all, save this. And I think I put this up here. I'll do start 2 here. And let's do a print preview. I'll say I'm going to do 1 print. These are all, I don't have anything set for defaults there, so they come up that way. If I put in a serial number of something like that, and I do this flyout, I could go back in time, right? You can just click again, say, oh, I originally made this in 2020 in June 18th, and hit preview. And it didn't have default values for that. That's why those aren't there. But you can see there's my serial number, there's my overhaul date. And one last thing we can do here in the design that's quite useful is in the form, you can make this a little bit bigger. And here, I'm going to slide this over just a little bit. Let's make the form a little bit bigger. And let's move a couple things here, make a little bit more space. Right? And I can put in a preview. So preview of template. And I'll just draw a little box here. And template 1, there it is. So now when I make changes, you'll see that there. Let's just save again, hit print and preview just to show you what that looks like again. As soon as I put in a serial number, it'll show up there. As soon as I put in a date, it'll show up there, right? So that's how nice this can be in terms of a form. It shows people what it's going to look like before they send it down to the laser. Okay. All right, so I'm going to pause again. I'll fix those entities and descriptions here, and then we'll come back for one final print. Okay, we're finally done. I've renamed things. Again, you can double click and hit that and put in whatever you want. You can also, I'm just going to show that you can actually save that so it goes on the top. You can left align it so it goes there. It doesn't really matter what you do, where you want to put that stuff, but you have a lot of freedom. You can also go up and just create a piece of text up here as well and call it a title. So if you want to give it a color, and just say whatever it is, nameplate for important stuff, whatever, right? You could give instructions at the top, whatever you want to do. You don't have to, obviously, but you can. You can make this whatever you want to size it a little bit bigger or longer or whatever works for you. And I've also set these, the one other thing I wanted to show here is when you click on any one of these, there is this data entry button, and its default is to use a specific value of nothing, of keeping it blank. And you can do that. You can keep it blank or keep it a default value until it's changed. But I typically will just say use sample data, and then if somebody does come in and edits the default value for this, it'll then show up here as well. So here, these are actually set to be blank, and there can be an advantage of that from a user data quality perspective. If you want it to be more obvious to an end user what fields they need to fill out, well, you could leave them empty, right? The other thing you could do is you could just say, look, I want it to be the sample data, but I want it to be whatever the last sample data was. So if you've got a really long serial number and it's only the last two digits that are changing, you might want to have this update to the default value or to the latest default value for a serial number. And the same thing then for this overhaul date. You just say use the latest one, or you could say um, to use today's date. That's another option. Okay, so your choice. You have to figure out what it is works best in your own process, and then move forward. Lastly, let's just go ahead and do a save again. We'll hit a print. I'll do a preview. Um, I should actually do one last thing here. This could be valuable, especially on serialized plates. So if you go into the serial number, you don't, again, have to do this. But as you go into transforms, you can say, look, I want the serial number to actually be incremented by bartender. Let's say it's, you recognize you can pick all kinds of sequence. You could, do a custom sequence of skip by 4, or you could actually have it be a custom sequence of top bottom instead of a serial number. There's all kinds of options here. I'm just going to keep it as alphanumeric right now. And you can preview the sequence, and that's what you're going to get. Okay, so let's just do that. You can actually preserve the number of characters so it doesn't change. And we'll say OK. Now, when we go to print, let's say you wanted to do 3 plates in the laser bay. Well, up here you could now say 3. You can just type 3 if you want. Okay, 1 copy per serial number, right? If you wanted 3 copies of the exact same plate, you would put it here and leave that to be 1. But in putting this at 3, you will now see, I'm going to pick a starting position. Let's say this one was crap and we made a mistake, and we're going to leave it in there, and we're going to start with this one. Okay, so the laser is going to start at number 2, and when I hit print, I can change some things here if I want. Here, I'll change this to 45, right? And hit preview, and that's where it's going to laze, here, here, and here. And notice that the serial number has changed, 45, 46, 47. If that's what you want to do, you can use Bartender to serialize for you. If it isn't sequential, it might just be as easy to go ahead and do 2 labels manually. But again, if you need to do more than one etch job at the same time, you can use Bartender to do some rather sophisticated serialization on this, right? Okay, I hope that was useful. I will forward this off to whoever is interested in making use of it, and hopefully you can play around with it, learn a few things on your own, and by all means, you're welcome to contact us at ID Integration if you have additional questions. Thanks.